Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulil ameen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Today inshallah we continue with our slow and steady pace, ayahs 16 through 20 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And if you notice, I try to integrate the grammar lesson into the vocabulary lesson a little bit, the last grammar lesson. And for here inshallah I'll try to highlight where pronouns are being used and why the certain type of pronoun is being used where it is. Just to reinforce the grammar lesson from last week. So the first ayah starts with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى. أولئك we covered, that's those. الذين, those who. There's this difference between these two that's more subtle than just those and those who. And when we get to the types of words, we'll study what this means versus what this means. This is what is known as ishara. And if you know like Urdu or something, you'll realize that ishara is kind of a gesture. So it has something to do with that. This is a relative pronoun, or what we call in English demonstrative pronoun. Sorry, not relative. So there's a difference between those, this being connecting to phrases versus this being something that, I think in English this is called demonstrative and this is relative. So anyways, we'll study the technicalities of these two words. But for now, you can know that this means those and this means those who. So this will be those and this will be those who. And again, I want to encourage a very precise translation of each word as we go along, because the exercises online only catch certain translations. So don't just put whatever you think is close. Inshallah, if you can use the words that we use here, it will be helpful. Ishtara is a new word. It comes from the root sharaya, and it means to barter. In modern standard Arabic, it's almost exclusively used for the word buy, but it's also can be the other side of the transaction, which is to sell. So it can be buy, sell, which would be barter. Because if you think about it, the economies of the past, they really didn't have market economies, so there was no buying side and selling side. It was just people used to exchange things. So it comes from a common ancestor, both of these words. So ishtara means to barter. So those who, they bartered is in the past tense. So to put the exact meaning up, I'll say they bartered. They bartered ad-dalala. Ad-dalala is a pretty simple word, which we all know. Dalala is a root. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ in Surah Al-Fatiha. And this is just the noun form of the word dalla. So, of the verb, sorry. So it can be converted into a verb, the same root. And this means the misguidance. The misguidance. And again, I emphasize things like the when there's alif lam, because we want to be precise with the translation, especially word-to-word translation. Bil huda. Bil huda is with the guidance. And the root word for huda is hadaya. And this, again, most of the things that have roots can be converted into verbs, because you might have heard ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Hopefully you did hear that, because you all know Surah Al-Fatiha. So ihdina sirat al-mustaqim is a request of Allah, oh Allah, guide us to the straight path. So from the same exact root, this is just a noun form with the guidance. So again, this ayah is talking about the munafiqun. They exchanged misguidance with guidance. So it was a transaction. They said, we'll give up guidance in exchange for misguidance. Fama, so not. And we saw ma being used in several different contexts already. The first being what, and we also saw it being used as not. For example, and not in combination with others would be, for example, innama, as the point was brought up before, that this is indeed not anything but. So ma is being used as not in this case. Okay. So not. Rabiha. Rabiha is to profit or to gain. So Rabiha is it gained. And if you notice on the exercises, you have the option of putting the gender. if you want to be very specific. So this would be feminine gender. Why is it feminine gender? Because what is doing the profiting? Their trade, which is tijara. And if you see, this originally came from ta marbuta, because tijara is written like this. When it doesn't have anything attached to it, it's written like this. Tijara. And you can see this ta marbuta, which is a sign of the femininity of the word, which we'll discuss. Which signs of the word can we look at and determine that it's a feminine word. But it gets opened up when there's something attached to it, so sometimes it's tricky. But tijara is feminine, so when you use a verb with a feminine word, again, the verb is coming before the noun, which never happens in English, but it's coming before the noun. So their trade didn't gain, right? Because everyone trades so that they get a profit in the future. So their trade did not profit. And this is the word, the pronoun, attached pronoun, third person plural, masculine, there. Again, I said I would highlight whenever the pronouns come up. So, tijaratuhum, this is receiving, this is not receiving an action of a preposition or a verb. It's just possessive, the third category that we talked about. So, tijara is a noun. Okay? Tijara means trade. So this would be their trade. And how do we know it's their trade? Why is it possessive? Because there's an attached pronoun at the end of the noun. So whenever this occurs, you know it's possessive. So their trade did not gain. The not coming from the mouth. وَمَا كَانُوا, and not. Kanu, again we covered a few different times. It's the verb to be. So this would be they were. Kana is he was. Kanat, she was. Muhtadin, ones who. Again, I want to emphasize the meme right here with the mu would be always ones who. I want you guys to translate it in a consistent manner. Not those who, because the reason I don't like those who is because then you can't differentiate between muhtadin and alladhina yahtadun. Alladhina yahtadun, those who they are guided. Muhtadin, the ones who are guided. Ones who are guided. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. So when they did this exchange, they thought that if we just buy, we can just pretend to be Muslims and pretty much exchange their guidance for misguidance. They thought it would benefit them in the world. But their worldly benefit, they saw a short-term gain, but they didn't realize how it was a long-term, it was a losing stock, to put an allegory for it. So moving on to the next ayah. This one is a little bit long. Mathaluhum. Mathal is example. And again, this is a noun. Example is a noun. It's a word that signifies an idea. So whenever you have this attached pronoun again, triple underline like I did last time, you have possession. So their example, or their similitude, if you look at some of the ones that translated in Old English, would be their similitude. Their example, kamathali, like. We had kaf before, and I told you to remember that kaf is simile, what in English is called a simile. Something is like something else, or this is just as good as that. So for both as and like, you would use kaf. Okay, here you would translate as like. I already wrote that down. So the kaf is the like. Mathal again is example. So their example is like the example. Alladhi. I'll write he who, because we don't want to write one who. I don't want to confuse you with the me. So I'll write he who. Istawqada. I told you to watch out for the ista, even though we didn't study it formally. We have already 2 or 3 times ista coming, meaning to seek. Waqada is the root word meaning fuel. So istawqada is seek to fuel something. Seek to fuel. And this is how you say to light a fire in Arabic. So this would be he lit. He lit. Their example is like the one who lights. It's like he who lights, or he lit. Nara. Everyone knows nara. It means fire. The root word is the same for fire and light. Noon, waw, ra. Because fire, you can think of it that fire gives off light, so they're related in that manner. Falamma, so when. Adaat, it lit. Just like, so this is another word for light. Ba, waw, hamza. Ba'a. It's not related to nur. Again, modern, to relate it to something that might be more familiar. In modern standard Arabic, you don't use nur as much, because nur is reserved for more of the classical usage, and they use ba, at least as much as I've heard. So it lit. Again, with this ta, you can see that it's feminine. We didn't study that, but just like I put feminine for the last verb that we had, this is also feminine. It lit. Ma hawl. Ma hawl is also in Urdu. Ma hawl meaning environment. So literally, what around him? What around him? What is around him? Around him. And in this case, hawl is a preposition, which we'll study today, the different types of prepositions, with the who. So now when you're attaching a attached pronoun to a preposition, you know it's receiving the action of the preposition, like we talked about. You're receiving the action of a verb, receiving the action of a preposition, or possessive. This is receiving the action of a preposition. So after it, so when it lit, what is around him? ذهب الله بنورهم. Dhahaba, Allah, first let's translate the simple one, Allah. And then you have dhahaba, which means by itself he went, but when modified by preposition be, means took. Dhahaba bi means he took. And I mentioned this in passing earlier, just to warn you that these kind of things come. When you have a preposition anywhere, you have a preposition, and there's a verb coming next to it, or it's being used with a verb. You need some experience to see that this is actually being used with this, but when it's used, it changes the meaning of the verb, sometimes pretty drastically. So this means took rather than went. He took. He took because it comes with be. Dhahaba bi. Ja'a bi is the same way. Ja'a means he came. Ja'a bi means he brought. So the bi is an oft used a modifier of verbs. So dhahaba Allahu bi nurihim. Allah took nurihim. Again, pronoun used in possession. There, nur, light. وَتَرَكَهُمْ, from the root, very simple root, taraka. And this is the second usage of a pronoun that we talked about, which is receiving the action of a verb now. So we had possession right here, we had preposition, and now we have verb. So the taraka means to leave. He left them. He left them. Answering the question whom? Whom did Allah leave? He left them. So it's receiving the action of taraka. Fi dhulumat, in dhulumat, which is often confused with dhulm. Dhulm means injustice or oppression. Dhulumat, from dhulma, dhulma is darkness. Dhulma, dhulumat. Darkness, darknesses. This alifta, the long alifta, makes it plural. So this is darknesses. So don't write oppression or oppressions. When I ask you this on the test, write darknesses. Okay?
So is the root word of
It's the same root word as even though it's the same root word as dhulm, oppression, it's a different noun from that same root. La yubsirun, not. Yubsirun, they see. Masculine. From the root word basara. They see. Okay, and again, zulm and zulma are both from the same root. They're related. Darkness and oppression, you can see that they're both negative connotation words, and etc. They refer to something similar in essence, but they're just two different constructions of nouns from the same root. Okay, so that's this ayah. So we have a short ayah just to wake everybody up. Summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarji'un. So this is deaf, dumb, blind. Okay? And dumb doesn't mean not able to think. It means not able to speak. Okay, so dumb in that usage. It's kind of an old English usage. And these are all plural. So you can say they're all adjectives, so they're all sifa. But they're plural sifa. Okay, so because it's describing the plural from the last ayah. If you go to the last ayah, we see that this is in plural. Tarakahum. He left them in their darkness, in darknesses they do not see. So it's they do not see. And what's some describers of they? They are sum, bukmun, and umyun. So these are plural. Sifa. So this is deaf, and this one is blind. And I also want you to know, this is a good thing to pay attention to. I want you to know the singular form of all these because they're confusing. When we study singular and plural, there will be certain words that have rules. Certain words will break those rules, but will have rules of their own. These ones are some of the very rare rules. So I just want you to memorize the singular form. And it's very interesting that the singular form is longer than the plural form. So that's why I just want you to know a little bit about these words. Asam, abkam, and arma. So you just add an alif to the beginning of all of these. Just add an alif and you have the singular version. If you want to describe one thing. And the root words are pretty similar. Sad are pretty simple, I should say. Sad, mim, mim over here. Why is it mim, mim? Because this shadda is telling you that you have two of these memes. Anytime you see a shadda that could fall on the root, always think maybe it's double. For example, dalla. Dalla, da, dad, lam, lam. Where do you get the second root? You get it from the shadda, the second lam. And how do you know that there's actually a second lam? You can look at the noun, like we did. Dalla, lam. It had two lambs. Okay. So summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarji'un. So they. This is a home. This is actually kind of a home that's not connected, because it's its own idea. It's connected to a conjunction. In English, conjunction. So it is the beginning of an idea. So it's not possession. It's not receiving a preposition. It's not receiving a verb, but it's still attached to fa. So I don't want you to get confused. This is starting a new idea. So they la yarji'un, do not return. Do not return to the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Yarji'un, do not return. They return. Again, I don't think I have to keep repeating this, but the ya wa nun we've seen at least 3 times already in today's lesson. So just remember that that's the oh means or. We had another one for either or before. It was if you remember from a few ayahs ago. This is aw. The difference between and aw is often described as has to be exclusive. Either one thing is true or the other, but both things cannot be true. And which one is that? That's is one thing is true, the other thing or the other thing is true, but both cannot be true at the same time. Aw means either or both. So for those familiar with computer science, there's one or, there's one exclusive or. So it's kind of like that. Okay? So aw means either the last ayah could apply or this ayah could apply or both. So these are two different parables. The first parable was about the mathaluhum istawqadna. Somebody tried to, their similitude is like the similitude of someone who lights a fire, falamma adaat, and then when it's lit up around him, Allah takes away their light. Dhahaballahu binurihim. So basically the hypocrites, they start off having some light, And then when they do that bartering, that exchange for dalala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took their light away because they don't want it anymore. Guidance. They exchange guidance for misguidance, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala snatched the light. So that's the first similitude. Aw, or, this is another similitude. Kasayyib. Sad, waw, ba. It's the same as musiba, for example. Musiba means something it's not just something that's hardship, but anything that really befalls you. Anything that befalls. Kasayyib is a rain cloud. Or a heavy rain. A heavy rain. Some people say it's heavy rain, some people say it's cloud. Ka is like again. So, or like a heavy rain. Sayyib. Minas sama, from the sky.
So in the test, if we say heavy downpour, then would we be right, or
heavy downpour? Yeah. Downpour is a heavy rain, right? Isn't that
right? But I just want to make sure that on the test, I don't know what you would.
On the test, if you can put down either downpour or heavy rain, I would prefer you don't put heavy downpour because that's just redundant. But yeah, so downpour or heavy rain is simpler, but both are the same. Again, it's easier for me to program the test to accept one answer. So if you all remember heavy rain, then it's easy for me. Otherwise, you all come back and complain I put downpour and didn't accept. But I'll try to put both rain and downpour and heavy downpour just to cover all the bases. Okay. So أو كصيب من السماء, heavy rain from the sky. This is samawa. Because the plural samawat, that's how you can remember the root for this. Samawa, even though there's a hamza here, it's kind of hidden. The wa is hidden somewhere here. But if you remember samawat, which is the plural of sama, then you can remember that it has a waw in there. The sky. Fihi, in it. Zulumat, again we have the same word that we studied 2 hours ago. Darknesses. Right, heavy rain. Because whenever there's a thunderstorm, oftentimes you can't even see in front of you. It's sheet and it's dark. It covers the sun, so it's dark. Wara'd, and thunder. There's a surah number 13. Surah Al-Ra'd. The thunder. Wabarq. What else is there? There's thunder, there's darkness, there's rain, and there's lightning. Okay. And how do you remember barq? Well, you can remember it by al-buraq. That was the horse or the animal. It doesn't actually say horse in the hadith, but the animal that the Prophet ﷺ used to go for Isra and Miraj. Right? Barq. So it was very fast. The entire trip took so less time that when he came back, the knocker on his door was still moving, or his door was still not back to its equilibrium, I should say. So that you can remember that lightning, okay? So because a lot of people get confused between Ra'd and Barq. Ra'd is the surah in the Quran, Barq is lightning. Okay? Buraq. Okay. The ayah is not finished. I just split into 2 slides. So the similitude is that when they experience this heavy downpour with Ra'd and Barq and Sayyib, what do? They get scared. يَجْعَلُونَ أَصَابِعَهُمْ فِي آذَانِهِمْ. They put their fingers in their ears. يَجْعَلُونَ. Ja'ala is to make or put. Okay? So either one is a correct word-to-word translation. They make or they put. And in fact it's more often make. But here it's, in this usage, is definitely they put. Asabi'ahum, their fingers. And again, I'm emphasizing the pronoun just so that you can stay familiar with the pronouns. This one is possessive. Asabir is an ism, attached to an ism. You have possessive. Their fingers, fi adhanihim, in their ears. And why do that? So this is from a sawa'iq. So sawa'iq is something that's so loud it makes you unconscious almost. So that's the plural of sawa'iq. So it's like thunderclap. So the combination of lightning and thunder that can knock you out of your senses. Sawa'iq. Thunderclap. That's what it says here. Thunderclap. So to put an English word to it, I guess. Very good. So thunderbolts, yeah, thunderbolts or thunderbolt. Okay, as-sawa'iq is plural. Hadar al-maut, fear. It has a fatha for a very specific reason, which we'll discuss when we get to that reason, studying grammar. Hadar al-maut, fear of death. This is death. Okay, so hadar al-maut. You just have to, for our purposes, you can just put fear, just fear and death. But when you translate it, you say from thunderclap for fear of death. So there's an extra word of here, and there's an extra word for here, and we'll discuss how that comes about when we discuss those grammar lessons. But for the word, you can just put fear and the death if you want to highlight the alif lam, the death. Wallahu muhitun, and Allah, I shouldn't have to write that. Muhit, one who, again the meme with the dhamma, one who. As soon as you see meme with the dhamma, I want you to put one who or one who. One who surrounds. Hawt. Hawata. Surround. Allahu muhitun bil kafirin, with the disbelievers. And I overheard a gentle argument about whether there should be they disbelieve or they reject. Both are correct. In the original Arabic, it's reject. But the Shar'i meaning, or the meaning that comes, I think almost 100% of the Quran, is they disbelieve. Okay? With the disbelievers. So this is the second similitude, and to finish the parable, we'll continue with ayah 20. It's the same parable. Yakadul barq, the lightning. We already know this word, so I'm writing it first. Lightning. These two words we don't know. Kada can be used just like kana, with many different verbs. Okay, kana. Kana is the verb to be. We said kanu, they were. Kaun, from the root kaf al nun. Kada is ka yada, kaf yada, but the root is not that important since you never use the root. You just use yakadu and kada. It means almost. So the lightning almost khatafa. Lightning almost, or nearly, it nearly yakhtafu. It snatches. It snatches. So the lightning nearly snatches absarahum, triple underline again, their sights. Possession. Here it's using possession. Yakadul barqu yakhtafu absarahum, the lightning almost snatches their sights. Kullama, every time. Kull means every, even when it's not attached to ma. Kull means every. Kullu shay'in, everything. Kullama, every time. Adaa, and ma doesn't mean time, but the construction itself means every time. Okay. Adaa lahum, it lit. We had adaat in the last ayah, or the second 2 ayahs ago. And this is the masculine form. We had adaat with the ta right here. This is without the ta. So adaa, because it's referring to something masculine. This barq is masculine. Versus the sa'iqa was feminine. Sa'iqa was feminine. So that's why it was adaat. I'm not sure which word it was used with, but it was a feminine word early on. Here it's a masculine word. Adaa lahum mashawfi. Masha means to walk. So they walk. They walk. Yamshi, it's a fairly often word that comes in the Quran, but it comes even more often in daily speech, right? He walked there, she walked there. Walking is something we're all obsessed with. mashaw fihi, in it. So every time it lit for them, they walk in it. وَإِذَا أَظْلَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ قَامُوا. And when, again, not oppressed, but darkness. And when it became dark. Okay? It became dark. Azlama is to become dark. And when, we discussed either before, just to refresh our
Why is it
mind.
not it darkened?
The question is there's a question why is it not darkened? It's the same thing in essence. It became dark or darkened. So if you want to use one word, it darkens. Alayhim, on them. Qamu. Qama is to stand, from qaf wa mim. Qawm, it comes from the same root word. Okay, stand. Aqim as-salah, also the same root word. Stand for salah, or establish the salah. Qamu, they stood. So when it's lit for them, so again, another parable of hypocrites is that they walk when it's lit. So Ibn Kathir relates that when times are going good for the Muslims, right? They're winning battles, they're getting a lot of war booty, they start walking with the Muslims. Then suddenly there's a hardship, battle of Ahzab comes, there's no food, no water. They suddenly say, oh, we're not Muslim anymore, we're actually with the kuffar. So that's the so every time it lights up for them, the guidance, I mean the light of Islam is so strong it nearly snatches away their sight, meaning they can't even comprehend what Islam is all about. They're very superficial in their Islam, so they just use it for walking. Light, they walk, and as soon as that thing comes, they didn't get that light, so they just stopped. They stood. They stood. And then to finish off the ayah, وَلَوْ شَاءَ, and if, law means if. Another word for if is in. Alif noon, in. Okay, so I want you to remember in and law. Law sha, law is something that didn't happen and never happened, but it's a hypothetical. Law sha, and it always comes with past tense.
So Wallahu is one word or wa is
It's so question is if walau is one word, not in English. Wa can, in Arabic you don't really write wa separately from the word that comes after it. So it's kind of attached, something like an attached word, but it's a separate word. Wa and la is separate. So wa is separate. Wa means and, so we translate it as and if.
okay.
And
So
if.
in the exercise basically
Right,
wa
and if.
and if.
And if. So right. So if I ask you what does walau mean, right? And if. It's a good question. Walau sha'a, and if Allah willed, right? Inshallah we say all the time, but very few of us know what that means. It doesn't mean if I feel like it, I'll do it. Inshallah means if Allah willed, meaning I'll put all my effort, and if Allah allows me to, then this will happen. Not, oh, inshallah I'll come to your dawah tomorrow if I don't oversleep. No? So that's not what inshallah means. Walau sha'Allah, and if Allah will, la dhahaba bi. Again, we have dhahaba bi. Dhahaba by itself, went. Dhahaba bi, take. Go with. Literally means went with, but it means take. Surely, lam, this could be confused with the preposition li. But don't confuse it. Okay, when it comes with the verb, surely. Surely, he took. Sam'ihim, their hearing, wa absarihim, I don't want to write it again because we did it, and their sights. Inna Allah, indeed Allah. We did inna before, I think, one time. Indeed, emphasis. A lot of emphasis in this ayah. Allah, ala kulli shayin qadir, on everything. Here I was referring to kul means every. Just like we had kullama every time. Kulli shay, everything. Shay means thing, kul means every. So just like in English, everything. Ala, on. So indeed Allah, on everything, qadir, powerful. He has power. Okay, and that's, I believe, the end of the ayah. Oh, powerful. So that concludes the 5 ayahs for today. So inshallah I'll ask questions after I finish this. I'll answer questions after I finish this slide. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.